Hi, Phil Turner from Timeform. We're looking forward to this year's Cheltenham Festival by looking back at some of the vintage champion hurdles this time around. I've picked out 5 personal ones, and we'll start with the horse which got me involved in the sport, to be honest, Night Nurse, who was absolutely my favourite when I was a young kid, watching Grandstand and World of Sport. Whether it was the name, whatever, he was a brilliant horse. He won the '76 champion hurdle, and he was top in what I think is sort of widely regarded as a vintage era of 2-mile hurdlers. And my vote for the sort of classiest renewal of the champion hurdle would be the 1977 one, because all of the top names were there and they were more or less all at their peak, and he came out on top, and he ended the season with a Timeform rating of 182, which to this day remains the highest for a hurdler. So it's well worth flagging up. And it was kind of sort of, it was a mixture of what made Night Nurse so good, because he was in his early days over hurdles, he was a trademark. He was just a front runner, absolutely rapid fire jumper, and just carried all before him. Certainly in '76 he rattled up a huge unbeaten sequence. In 1977 it was a bit tougher for him. It wasn't nothing like so easy. He headed briefly 3 hours, and the battling qualities which came to sort of mark the rest of his career really came into play, because it's supposed to be, it wasn't the ground he liked. The horse is supposedly in better form, and he knuckled down, got it back and battled on really well to beat Monksfield up the hill for what was an emotional win. And if you're looking for the strength in depth in that race, Monksfield, who finished second, he won the next 2 renewals of the champion. Pigeon, who finished 4th, he won the next 2 after that, having finished second to Monksfield in '78 and '79. And even the favourite for the race, who was a quirky old sort called Bird's Nest, he was placed in 1980, and in '81, although he flopped in the champion hurdle, he still won 2 or 3 of the big 2-mile hurdles at the age of 11, yeah, right, as the same age as Pigeon was then. So, you know, that's out of the ordinary. They were beating good horses. It wasn't like the younger horses in '81 were bad horses. They were still able to beat them at that age. So I think there's plenty of evidence that this was the best era of hurdlers. And at that particular moment, Night Nurse was the best, and you're going to get no arguments from me on that subject. Moving on, if Night Nurse was a sort of never say die attitude, I don't think you can say that about a horse called Archibald, who definitely sort of, there was more of a hint of Bird's Nest about him, in the sense that he was a strong travelling horse, really good looking horse as well, but he often flattered to deceive at the end of a race. And despite the fact he had plenty of wins against the good hurdlers of his era, he always just came up short in the champion hurdle. And the 2005 champion hurdle is one which anyone who was there will never ever forget. Now, Paul Carberry was a wonderful rider, mercurial rider, and he came in for a fair bit of stick after this ride. Now, whether you think he deserved that or not, anyone who was there will never forget the sight of him absolutely motionless halfway up the running with his bum stuck in the air, with everyone else riding for their life's worth. It didn't pay off on this occasion. Subsequent events would suggest he would have probably finished second anyway, because he was up against a real resilient type in Hardy Eustace, who battled on well to retain his champion hurdle crown. It was a second straight win in the race for him, with just a neck to spare. Archibald in second, and a further neck back to Brave Inc, who actually won the race in 12 months later. So they were a good little bunch of hurdlers around them, but as I say, I don't think we'll ever see the like of that race again, and it's one which will stick in the memory. Now, super cool waiting rides in the champion hurdle, they do sometimes come off, and there was a happy ending in 1981 when John Franklin was riding Pigeon, the aforementioned Pigeon, now aged 11. He had a troubled preparation. I don't think he'd been seen since the autumn. His regular rider, John Joe O'Neill, was out with a serious injury, broken his leg very badly. They thought they might actually have to amputate his leg. So the champion jockey at the time, John Franklin, was called in, but there was a chance he might not have been available. So apparently Peter Easterby, Pigeon's trainer, had even lined up Lester Piggott to come out of to have a rare ride over jumps to ride him in it. Fortunately, Franklin was available, and even Piggott would have been proud of this ride. He was basically sat motionless, produced him on the run-in, and he only really shook him up sort of in the final 100 yards. Never had to go for his stick, and you know, a tremendous win against 2 much younger horses, Pollard's Town and Daring Run, with Ted Walsh with a fairly agricultural style on the third. Yeah, he was a great horse, Sea Pigeon. He was a very popular horse on the flat as well in this era. He won 3 Chester Cups, he won an Ebor, and often ran into races like the Doncaster Cup. He was a talented horse. The sort of irony was, though, he was a stayer on the flat, and yet over jumps he needed a bare 2 miles. And he'd been runner-up in 78 and 79 when they used to run around the sort of winning post. And they changed the course for 1980, but they didn't do that, so that cut out that extra hill that had to go up, and I think that might have made a difference from him finishing second and actually winning the champion hurdle, because it wasn't quite such a stiff test for those final 2 years he won. So big vote for Sea Pigeon, and then we'll move on for another horse who was another dual champion in Hurricane Fly. There's only 2 horses who regained their champion hurdle crown after losing it. Comedy of Errors was the first, and Hurricane Fly was the second, and he won a really hot renewal in 2013. It featured 3 previous champions. Hurricane Fly, Rock and Ruby was the one who took his crown off him in 2012, and Binocular, and there were also 2 previous Triumph Hurdle winners. So it was an up to scratch renewal, a really strongly run renewal. I'm sure if we were doing time figures in those days, it would have posted a high time figure as well. And it was just everything which we came to expect from Hurricane Fly. He was an utter pro, travelled strongly, jumped really fast, and Ruby Walsh produced him to win his race, and 9 times out of 10 he would win his race. If you think about it, he was in that era when Big Bucks notched up his record-breaking stretch of unbeaten wins, yeah. And I always thought that, if anything, Hurricane Fly's achievements were even more impressive than Big Bucks, because although he had the odd defeat in amongst his sort of numerous wins, I think it's much harder to do that in cutthroat 2-mile races where you're not necessarily going at a sort of solid gallops all the time. Some of those races are messy races, and he managed to sort of find a way to win in all types of scenarios. And yeah, for me, he always had the vote over Big Bucks in that era of 2 wonderful horses in their own right. So definitely needs to sort of be recognised in the list of champions. And we've listed 4 dual champions there. We should just flag up 1 triple champion in Istabraq. In total, there are actually 5 3-times winners of the champion hurdle, most of them dating back a fair old way. There were Hatton's Grace, Sir Ken, Persian War, See You Then in the 80s, and then Istabraq, who may well have won a 4th but for the foot and mouth outbreak, which saw us lose the meeting in 2001. There's a bit of recency biases, but I suspect he was probably the best of those 5. And the first of his wins in 1998 is the one I always sort of turn to for the wow factor, because the way he was ridden after that, he was often in smaller fields where he'd scared off most of the opposition, and he didn't need to sort of be ridden to sort of show his brilliance in a way. He was just ridden to win the races, quite rightly. But the first time he ran in the race, no one knew he had that kind of superiority. It was a massive field, and they went a real gallop in it. And Charlie Swan just thought, right, we're taking no chances here. I'm going to sit in the first 4 or 5 out of trouble. He took it up at sort of just coming down from the top of the hill before 3 out, and he just blew them away with a massive winning margin. And yeah, it was just a breathtaking thing to witness at the track. And you just knew this is a horse who deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as some of the previous names that we've mentioned here. So yeah, that first champion win of Istabraq is the one I always turn to.